So let's open a part and let's start preparing it for SolidCAM. This part is new. All we have is the part itself, and we have the history tree on the left hand side. This part was designed inside SolidWorks, so we actually have the history tree here. If your part was an import, you could only have one feature called import. One thing I like to do is to do some organization by holding down Shift on your keyboard, clicking the top button, the top feature, then click the bottom feature while still holding down Shift, and make a new folder called part. Now, one thing I also like to do is to change the scene. You can change the scene to something that would be easier for you to see. I like warm kitchen. Just seems to be easy on my eyes. Now, what we'd like to do is to add our stock material at this point. There's advantages to adding the stock material ahead of time before going into SolidCAM. Using the SolidWorks tools is very helpful when manipulating the stock material. Sometimes you may have to move the stock material around to get the part into the proper shape, into the proper location. And sometimes you need to plan ahead as to what the stock material could be or should be. What I'm going to do is start a sketch on the top of my part, and I'm going to draw the stock material around the part. On this part, it was drawn on center, so we actually have our origin here. Probably a lot of times when you want to draw your stock material, you might not be lucky enough to have the part on center, so you could just sketch a rectangle around it. And also, you may not want to assume that the part's drawn on center, even though it looks like it is. One way around this is to just sketch a rectangle around your part and have the four sides of the rectangle meet the extremities of your part. Here I'm going to hold down Shift and click these two edges and make them collinear. Then I'm going to hold down these two edges and make them collinear. Same thing with these edges, make them collinear. Sometimes you may have a radius where you could hold down the line, and then click a radius, and you can make them tangent. Not in this part, but it is useful to know that sometimes you may have to make this vertical or horizontal line tangent to a feature to actually find its extremities. So I made this rectangle, and it is at the extremities of the part. What I want to do is hold down Shift now on these four lines, and I want to make them for construction. So we have our four lines at our extremities, and they are construction. Now, to find the center of the part, we can use center line. We could draw from corner to corner two lines, and where they meet would be the center of the component. We could connect midpoint to midpoint of the lines, both vertically and horizontally. All of these center lines that we just created all end up pointing to the center. And like I said, this part is drawn on center, so it's easy to see that we're correct with what we've done. Now, once we know the center of our part based off of its extremities, we can draw our stock material from center. Now, whatever dimension we put on our stock material, it will be equal material all the way around. In this case, when we draw the width, we have equal material on the left-hand side and right-hand side. Let's figure out our height. 3 inches isn't going to be enough. Let's make it 3 1/4. Okay. Since these lines were center lines, when we go to extrude our feature, it will not use those center lines in the extrude. Now, what we can do here is draw our extrusion in 2 directions. In most cases, we're going to have material on the top of the part and material on the bottom of the part. So what I'm going to do is make the top 0.125 and direction 2. I'm going to make that 1.5. That gives us a stock material that is 1 inch 625 thick. Now, when we accept this geometry, what we don't want to do is merge the results, as this default setting shows. I'll show you what happens. When we do that, now our part has been encapsulated inside our extruded stock material. What we want to do, and we can go back into edit, what we want to do is unclick merge results. And then when we accept that, what we get is two bodies. We have the part, and now we have this boss extrude number 2, which I'm going to rename to stock. Then we can right click on the stock and change its transparency. Now we can see our stock material is inside our part. Well, our part's inside our stock material all the way around. And the transparency helps us to still view our part that we're going to be machining, but also be aware of where our stock material is at. Now we can add this boss extrude to a folder, and we'll call it stock. Okay, so we have our part inside of our folder, and we have our stock inside the folder. Now, one thing we probably don't want to do is, looking at this part here, we're going to hold down here on the bottom, we're going to skim the top. In this case, we're skimming a lot of material off the top, and we have so much material to hold on in the vise. So let's take some material from the top and put it at the bottom. Give us more material to hold on in our vise, which is always helpful for when we do aggressive machining. So let's go back to this feature. Let's edit the feature. And let's take 100 thou off the top. We can either type in 25 thousandths, or we can type in minus 0.1. And then we can come down here and hit plus 0.1. Okay, so we just took 100 thousandths off of this and added it to the bottom. When we accept, we can click the line, come down to here and view that our stock material is still our nominal 1 inch 625 stock material. But when we look from the side, we have a little bit of stock material on the top, which is just enough to face off, and the majority of our stock material on the bottom where we can hold in our vise. So this is a good start for getting into SolidCAM, get our stock material modeled, and do some pre-planning ahead of time before we even go into SolidCAM. At this point, I'm going to save it, and there is how to create our stock material. We still have some more stuff to do to get us into SolidCAM, but this is definitely going on the right track.